1965. A choir suddenly erupts in Hebrew while violent orchestral rhythms shake the concert hall. The audience freezes. This does not sound like traditional sacred music. It feels like prayer colliding with chaos. How did Leonard Bernstein create one of the most emotionally powerful choral works in modern music history? West Side Story was pulling in $150,000 a week at the box office, outpacing nearly every other show in New York. On television, his young people's concerts drew a Nielsen rating of 31.2, the kind of number that made CBS executives giddy and kept Bernstein's face in millions of living rooms. Behind the scenes, his calendar was a blur of rehearsals, interviews, and recording sessions. Every week brought a new concert at Carnegie Hall, a new deadline, a new demand for something dazzling. The applause was relentless, but so was the pressure. Each broadcast, each sold-out performance, each magazine cover only raised the stakes. Columbia Records wanted a new symphonic album. The New York Philharmonic needed a season's worth of programs. Broadway producers called about revivals, and every phone call came with a dollar sign attached. Bernstein's public persona, part maestro, part showman, was now a brand that powered not just ticket sales, but an entire industry. The world expected miracles, and it expected them on schedule. But that wasn't the real reason his days felt so tight. The fame machine moved faster every year, and Bernstein was trapped inside, racing to keep up. The spotlight was blinding, and he knew it could turn cold in an instant. Underneath the glamour, the clock was always ticking. A letter arrived from Chichester Cathedral in the summer of 1964, addressed to Leonard Bernstein, by then a man whose name meant box office gold and television spectacle. But this was no ordinary invitation. The Dean's Commission came with an unusual offer, a generous fee, the freedom to write in Hebrew if he wished, and a contract that demanded not just one but two premieres, first in the ancient stone nave of Chichester, then in the high-voltage glare of a New York concert hall. For Bernstein, the timing was both a gift and a dare. The contract landed during his self-declared sabbatical, a rare window carved out between relentless conducting, television deadlines, and the fallout of a public life lived at full volume. The Commission's fine print listed dual premieres, royalty sharing, and the right to record, and it hinted at both risk and reward. It was a chance to step off the treadmill, if only for a moment, and create something that belonged to him alone. But the most personal clause was not on paper. In private letters and a battered scrapbook, Bernstein confessed to a different kind of pressure, the need to speak at last in his own voice. He wrote of feeling pulled toward Hebrew, the language of his childhood prayers, and of the hope that sacred music could bridge his Jewish identity with the world's expectations. The cathedral's open invitation to use Hebrew was more than a courtesy. It was an opening for a side of Bernstein that rarely made it past the footlights. The contract became a promise to himself, and the weight of that promise would shape every bar he wrote. The next decision would be the hardest. Which words, which language, and which part of himself would he dare to reveal to the world? Bernstein's first decision was language. He chose Hebrew not for tradition, but for urgency. In his 1964 sketches, Hebrew letters and jagged rhythmic cells crowd the margins, each marked with notes that say must sound as prayer, not translation. The Psalms in their original tongue lose their softness. Every syllable lands with percussive force, the text itself shaping the rhythm. The choir does not simply sing, they drive the words forward, almost shouting as if the language itself is a drum. The opening movement erupts in 5/4 and 7/8 meters that jolt and stagger. This is not the measured pace of Anglican hymns. It is restless, almost combative, echoing the street rhythms of West Side Story. Percussion, including timpani, bongos, snare and cymbals, does not decorate, it propels. 3 trumpets and 4 trombones slice through the choral fabric, their fanfares nodding to Mahler and Stravinsky, but with a Broadway edge. The organ, usually the Anglican anchor, becomes a modal foundation, its pedal points and chorale textures steadying the swirling chaos. Bernstein worked with the Chichester organist, fine-tuning registrations so the organ would support, never overpower, the choir. The choir's architecture is restless too. Instead of blending, voices split apart. Treble soloists soar, Adult altos and tenors cluster in sudden bursts. Bernstein's original plan called for a boy soprano, a voice of innocence cutting through the tumult. Today, women sopranos often take the line, but the effect remains, a single voice rising above the storm. Every technical choice, language, meter, brass, percussion, choir, serves to make the Psalms feel immediate and alive. Thunder cracked through the nave of Chichester Cathedral on July 13, 1965, not from the English sky, but from Leonard Bernstein's Chichester Psalms. The opening bars hit with a force that startled even seasoned choir veterans. Hebrew syllables ricocheted off the stone walls, propelled by brass and percussion, that sounded more like a Broadway overture than a church anthem. The audience, Anglican clergy, local dignitaries, families in Sunday best, sat frozen for a heartbeat. Then came a wave of uneasy whispers. Some listeners leaned forward, eyes wide. Others shifted in their seats, caught between awe and confusion. The cathedral's ancient acoustics turned every choral outburst into a rolling echo. Reviewers from the Times and the Guardian noted how the sound seemed to hang in the air, blurring the line between music and architecture. The reverberations stretched each Hebrew phrase, amplifying the work's intensity. One critic wrote, "It was as if the Psalms themselves were shaking the cathedral's foundations." But admiration was not universal. The British press split almost instantly. Some hailed Bernstein's rhythmic violence and luminous harmonies as a jolt of new life for sacred music. Others bristled at the Hebrew text, calling it disruptive, even alien, in an Anglican service. The Times questioned whether this was a sacred work at all, or a Broadway spectacle in disguise. Letters to the editor poured in, debating whether the cathedral had hosted a masterpiece or a scandal. Amid the uproar, the choir became unlikely stars. Choristers later recalled the adrenaline rush, how Bernstein's conducting demanded ferocity, not just beauty. For many in the pews, it was the sound of tradition colliding with something utterly new. The shock of that night would ripple far beyond Chichester, setting off arguments about faith, music, and identity that still echo today. Chichester Psalms did not just spark debate, it rewired the DNA of choir culture. In the decades that followed its premiere, the piece moved from a controversial newcomer to a staple of concert halls around the world. According to Backtrack's Global Performance Database, Chichester Psalms saw a 35% rise in programming across professional and university choirs from 1970 to 2020. That is not a fluke. It is a sign of a work that refuses to fade, even as trends shift and new styles surge in and out of fashion. Contemporary conductors point to the piece's rhythmic drive and emotional volatility as reasons for its enduring appeal. Marin Alsop, who has led performances from London to Baltimore, describes the Psalms as a shot of adrenaline for any choir, dangerous, exhilarating, and unrelenting. For many directors, it has become a rite of passage. The irregular meters and Hebrew text demand both precision and passion, forcing singers to move beyond comfort zones and into something raw and immediate. Programming data tells its own story. Major festivals now slot Chichester Psalms alongside works by Bach, Beethoven, and Mahler, treating it as essential repertoire. Choral directors cite its ability to electrify both seasoned musicians and first-time listeners. The piece's journey from scandal to standard is mapped in every season's program notes, concert posters, and rehearsal schedules. It is a living record of how Bernstein's Risk became a modern choral tradition. Hollywood composers have spent decades mining the sound of Chichester Psalms. John Williams in 2005 described Bernstein's choral writing as a blueprint for his own battle scenes in Star Wars. Hans Zimmer points to the psalmic climax of Chichester when talking about the choral surges in Inception. The fingerprints are everywhere. Brassy fanfares, choir's rhythmic engine, percussion that does not just colour, but attacks. It is the same sonic DNA that powers the most unforgettable moments in blockbuster scores. But the reach of Chichester Psalms stretches far beyond concert halls and movie theatres. On streaming platforms, the piece has found a new audience. Spotify and Apple Music both reported a sharp spike in streams after 2020, when the work landed on classical crossover playlists. YouTube's Carnegie Hall performance now counts millions of views, and TikTok creators have spliced the opening bars into everything from film montages to meditation reels. The music's emotional voltage, its blend of violence and prayer, cuts through the digital noise. What does it mean when a sacred choral work from 1965 keeps resurfacing in the world's most modern soundtracks and viral feeds? The answer might be hiding in the next chord, the next breath, the next time a choir turns a prayer into something that feels like a cinematic explosion. Chichester Psalms explained, maybe not fully, but its power is still pulsing everywhere you listen. Chichester Psalms still crackles with the same spiritual voltage that electrified its first audience. In a world divided by faith and language, Bernstein's fusion of Broadway sacred music and raw emotion keeps rewriting the rules. The question now isn't if it belongs, it's how much further it can take us. Share your thoughts below.